They cut me off, hoping I'd beg. My revenge made them. True story. Have you ever felt your own child look you in the eye and lie to you? Have you ever felt your own child look you in the eye and lie to you? Have you ever felt your own child look you in the eye and lie to you? I have. More times than I can count, actually. And that feeling, that deep, gut-wrenching betrayal, taught me the biggest, most painful lesson of my life. It taught me that sometimes, the people you love the most, the ones you'd give anything for, can see you not as a person, not as a mother, but merely as a means to an end. An ATM, if you will. And when that realization hits, it changes everything. It changes you. It was a Tuesday afternoon, I remember it vividly. The late autumn sun was streaming through my living room window, casting long, golden fingers across the Persian rug that Arthur and I had picked out together years ago. It was a deceptively peaceful setting, a quiet tableau for the storm that was about to unfold. My phone buzzed on the antique mahogany side table, a little tremor against the polished wood. It was a message from Zilia, my daughter-in-law. I picked it up, a little flutter of hope, as always, in my chest. Perhaps this time, it would be an invitation for coffee, a spontaneous suggestion for a quiet lunch, or even a simple, "How are you, Mom?" A genuine inquiry not prefaced by a financial request. But no. My heart knew, even before my eyes registered the image, that it wouldn't be. It was a picture. A glossy, professionally shot image of a luxury cruise liner, gleaming white against a brilliant, impossibly blue sea. It was immense, with towering decks, opulent balconies, and what looked like multiple swimming pools sparkling on the top deck. Beneath it, a message, casual yet effusive: "Look, Asteria. Caius and I just booked our dream trip. A month-long European cruise. Can you believe it? So excited to tell you all about it when we get back." The words vibrated with a triumphant glee that seemed entirely disconnected from my reality. My heart sank, a heavy stone in my chest, plunging through layers of hope and denial. A month-long European cruise. My mind immediately went to the cost, the sheer, astronomical sum of money that would entail. I could almost hear the zeros adding up in my head. I knew, with a certainty born of years of experience, that they couldn't afford it. Not with Caius's latest venture, a cryptocurrency mining operation, barely breaking even, if it was even doing that. Which meant me. It always meant me. The invisible hand, the unseen provider. But then I reread the last part again, when we get back. Not when we go, or "We'd love for you to join us," or even a polite "We're so sorry we couldn't invite you." Just when we get back. A casual, almost dismissive acknowledgement of my existence as an audience, not a participant. I swallowed, a dry, bitter taste coating my tongue, like ash. My fingers, gnarled slightly with age but still capable, tightened around the phone. I waited. And waited. I tried to convince myself I was overthinking it, as I always did. Maybe they were planning a surprise? Perhaps it was a prepaid gift from some long-forgotten wealthy relative? Maybe they'd call later with the details, with an excited invitation for me to join a specific leg of the journey, or at least a heartfelt thank you for my past generosity that had enabled such dreams. But the days stretched into a week, then two. No calls. No follow-up. Just casual mentions from Caius during our weekly Sunday lunch that they were so busy preparing for the trip, packing, arranging things. He'd talk about the exotic ports of call, the gourmet dining, the onboard entertainment, his eyes sparkling with an excitement he rarely showed for anything other than his own pursuits. Never once did he look at me directly, never once did he ask if I'd like to see their itinerary, or if I had any advice on European travel. It was as if I was invisible, a silent, benevolent ghost in the room, meant only to listen and admire, perhaps to nod approvingly. Then, one evening, I finally couldn't take it anymore. The silence, punctuated by my own churning thoughts, was unbearable. I called Caius. My fingers hovered over his number, a strange mix of dread and faint hope fluttering in my chest. "Son," I said, trying to keep my voice light, to sound casual, despite the tremor I felt deep within my core, I saw Zilia's message about your cruise. It looks absolutely magnificent. I was just wondering about the details. When are you leaving? I held my breath. There was a moment of awkward silence on the other end, so palpable I could almost feel it humming. Then, Caius cleared his throat, a small, forced cough. Oh, Mom. Yes, the cruise. It's a couples-only thing, you see. Very romantic, very intimate. Just Zilia and me. You know, a chance for us to reconnect. He chuckled, a false, hollow sound that echoed in the quiet confines of my living room. We'll be gone for the whole of next month. But don't worry, we'll send you postcards. And we'll tell you all about it when we get back. Every single detail. You'll feel like you were right there with us. The words, meant to placate, felt like a slap. My hand trembled as I held the phone, the plastic cool against my clammy palm. A couples-only thing. A chance for them to reconnect. And I was supposed to pay for it. My money, my substantial inheritance, the carefully managed legacy of my beloved Arthur, was footing the bill for their intimate getaway, while I sat alone in my quiet home, eagerly awaiting postcards and second-hand stories. It wasn't just the money, you see. It was the blatant, unapologetic disrespect. The assumption that I would simply nod, smile, and transfer the funds without question. The utter disregard for my feelings, for my very existence beyond my financial contributions. It was as if they had taken my heart, wrung it dry, and then tossed it aside, leaving only the husk of my bank account. I remember hanging up the phone, my fingers numb, my ears ringing with the echo of Caius's empty chuckle. I walked over to the armchair by the window, the same armchair where I'd sat moments before, foolishly hoping for an invitation, for a glimmer of genuine connection. The sun had long set, and the room was bathed in a dull, gray light, reflecting the landscape of my soul. I felt a coldness spread through me, a chilling clarity that cut through the lingering fog of denial. This wasn't just a slight. This wasn't an oversight. This was a deliberate act, a calculated exclusion. They didn't want me there. They only wanted my money. And that, my dear friend, was the final straw. The very last thread of hope, of longing for their genuine affection, snapped inside me with a quiet, decisive sound. What was I doing? What had I become? A mere cash dispenser for their lavish fantasies? No. Not anymore. Not one more penny. So, how did we get here, you ask? How did a mother, who loved her son with every fiber of her being, reach a point where she was reduced to an uninvited financier for a couples-only cruise? Oh, it's a long story, a tapestry woven with threads of hope, desperation, and ultimately, a profound sadness. A story of how love can become a currency, and how a mother's heart can be slowly, painfully, commodified. It began many years ago, after my beloved husband, Arthur, passed away. Arthur was a truly remarkable man, a visionary in his field of industrial design. He built a successful business from the ground up, a legacy of innovative products and ethical practices. He was my anchor, my confidant, the one who always knew how to make me laugh, even on the darkest days. When he left us, suddenly and unexpectedly, it felt as though a vital part of me had been ripped away. I missed him terribly, of course, every single day, every single quiet evening in our home. But his foresight and hard work had provided a secure foundation. He left me with substantial wealth, enough to live comfortably for the rest of my days, and then some. Arthur had always been the practical one, the steady hand, and I was the heart, perhaps a little too soft, a little too trusting. I often wonder what he would have said, what he would have done, had he seen what became of his carefully built security. My son, Caius, was always a dreamer. Even as a child, he'd talk about grand schemes, elaborate inventions, and world-changing ideas. He'd build intricate Lego castles, only to abandon them halfway through to start a new, even grander project. After Arthur passed, Caius, then in his early 30s, decided to become an entrepreneur. His first venture was a gourmet coffee shop, The Daily Grind, which, despite my significant investment in its sleek, minimalist interior and artisanal beans, lasted less than a year. He blamed the landlord, the fickle tastes of the local hipsters, everything but his own lack of business acumen. Then came a tech startup, InnovateSphere, which fizzled out before it even launched, taking another substantial chunk of my savings with it. He said the market wasn't ready for his genius. Then an organic food delivery service, Green Eats, which, ironically, lost more money than it made, delivering overpriced, wilted kale to a handful of bewildered customers. Each time, he'd come to me, eyes wide, full of promises, explaining how this time it was different, this time it was going to be big, a game changer. And each time, despite my growing unease, I'd open my purse. Why? Because he was my son. My only child. And I wanted to see him succeed. I wanted to help him build the life he dreamed of. More than that, I wanted to be loved. To be included. To feel like a valued part of his life, not just a bystander. Then there was Zilia. Oh, Zilia. She married Caius about 20 years ago, a whirlwind courtship that left me slightly breathless. She was beautiful, with a striking presence, always impeccably dressed, and had an almost magnetic charm that drew people to her, or at least, their attention. At first, I was delighted. I thought, finally, Caius has found someone to ground him, to build a stable life with. I imagined family dinners, shared holidays, a daughter-in-law who would become a true friend. But Zilia had grander aspirations than stability. She was a social climber, obsessed with appearances, with designer clothes, luxury holidays, and being seen in the right circles. Her greatest desire was to project an image of immense, effortless wealth, an opulent lifestyle that would make others envious. And for that, she needed money. My money. Early on, it started subtly, almost imperceptibly. A request for a small loan to cover a temporary gap in Caius's business finances, a promise to pay it back as soon as the next big deal closes. Then, a gift for the down payment on their first house, a beautiful, sprawling property in an affluent neighborhood, far grander than anything they could reasonably afford. They claimed they'd pay me back, of course, every time. But that day never came. I remember distinctly, Caius said, his voice earnest, "Mom, you know how hard it is to get started these days. This isn't just for us, it's for your grandchildren's future." And how could I say no to that? My grandchildren, little Luna and Finn, were the light of my life, even then. Their innocent faces, their joyful laughter, were the purest things in my world. The thought of helping them, of securing their future, was an irresistible pull. Soon, the gifts became expected. A quiet conversation would lead to a sigh about unforeseen expenses. Private school tuition for Luna and Finn? Of course, Grandma Asteria would cover it. They need the best education, Mom, you know how competitive the world is now, they'd say, their voices laced with an urgency that seemed to brook no argument. And I'd pay. Year after year, hundreds of thousands of dollars flowing from my accounts to theirs, often with just a perfunctory text message or a brief, almost whispered thank you. Holidays? Mom, the children deserve to see the world. It's an investment in their global understanding. A trip to the Maldives, then a safari in Africa, then skiing in the Alps. Each one, a detailed itinerary followed by a bill quietly forwarded to my financial advisor, Mr. Henderson, with a casual note, "Please handle this, Asteria." They lived a life of extraordinary luxury, entirely at my expense. They had 2 luxury cars, leased through my funds, regularly upgraded to the latest models. Their home was constantly being redecorated, the latest smart appliances, bespoke furniture, original art, all purchased with my generosity. Zilia's wardrobe was a never-ending carousel of designer handbags, shoes, and bespoke outfits, each one more extravagant than the last. She'd show them off on social media, always carefully curated photos of their seemingly perfect, affluent lives, a life built on a foundation of my quiet sacrifice. And when I'd visit, she'd often make subtle comments about how blessed they were, or how lucky Caius was to have such a supportive mother. But it was always said with a detached politeness, never with genuine warmth, never with the intimacy of true family. It was as if she was speaking to an audience, not to me. Do you know what it's like to see your own money, your late husband's hard-earned legacy, being flaunted by people who barely acknowledge your presence, let alone your contribution? It's a strange, hollow feeling, like watching a play where you're the stage manager, providing all the props and lighting, but never allowed on stage, never even given a curtain call. I longed for a simple thank you that felt genuine, a spontaneous hug, a genuine conversation that wasn't about money or their next lavish plan. I craved to be invited, truly invited, to their family events, not just the obligatory holiday dinners where I was often seated at the end of the table, a silent observer, feeling like a ghost at my own feast. Zelia would host grand parties, inviting all her elite friends, people with impressive titles and even more impressive bank accounts, or at least, the appearance of them. I remember one time, I offered to help set up, to perhaps bake a special cake, something I loved doing, a skill Arthur always praised. She laughed, a light, dismissive sound that grated on my nerves. "Oh, Asteria, darling, you don't need to worry about any of that. We have caterers, you know. Professional chefs. Just come and enjoy yourself. And perhaps wear something a little less casual. My friends are quite particular." It was a polite dismissal, a clear message that I didn't fit into her carefully constructed world, that my simple, heartfelt gesture was an embarrassment. And Caius? He became increasingly distant. Our conversations revolved solely around his latest investment opportunity or their upcoming expenses. He'd call, and my heart would leap, thinking he missed me, thinking he wanted to share a personal moment, only to hear his familiar, "Mom, I need to talk to you about something important." And it was always money. Always. My hope would deflate like a punctured balloon. I recall a particularly painful Christmas. I had bought Luna a beautiful, hand-knitted scarf, something I had poured my heart into, staying up late for weeks to finish it. She opened it, smiled briefly, a polite, almost practiced smile, and then moved on to the next gift, a brand-new, top-of-the-line gaming console from her parents, bought, of course, with my money. Caius and Zelia watched her, beaming, taking all the credit, basking in her delight. I sat there, my handmade gift discarded in a pile of wrapping paper, and felt utterly invisible, a profound ache in my chest. It was a pattern that repeated itself endlessly. My emotional offerings, my genuine love, my deep desire for connection, were consistently overlooked, dismissed, or simply not seen, in favor of the material gifts I could provide. There were times, oh, there were so many times, I thought about stopping. About saying no. The words would form on my tongue, but then the guilt would creep in. The fear. What if they truly did struggle without me? What if my grandchildren suffered, removed from the privileged world they knew? What if they stopped calling altogether? I was afraid of losing them, even if what I had wasn't true connection. I held on to the desperate hope that if I just kept giving, eventually, they would see me. They would love me for me, not for my bank account. It was a delusion, I know now. A sad, pathetic delusion. But at 72, after decades of nurturing, loving, and sacrificing, it's hard to just walk away from your own child, from the only family you have left. Until that cruise. Until that final, humiliating realization that I was nothing more than a blank check. What would you have done? How much more could you take? For me, the answer was, apparently, no more. The phone call with Caius about the couples-only cruise, that hollow laugh, it shattered something deep inside me. It wasn't just anger, though there was certainly a searing rage, a bitter resentment that tasted like bile. It was a profound sense of clarity, a cold, sharp understanding of my true place in their lives. I was not family. I was a resource. And resources, unlike family, can be cut off. I sat there for a long time, the phone still in my hand, staring out the window at the deepening twilight. The thought that had been a whisper for years, a faint, almost forbidden thought, now screamed in my mind, a roaring crescendo, enough of the endless giving. Enough of the silent suffering. Enough of the desperate hope for love that never came, for a genuine embrace that always felt out of reach. But what did enough even mean? My money was inextricably linked to their lives. Their mortgage, Caius's failing businesses, Luna and Finn's private school tuition, their very lifestyle, the expensive restaurants, the annual vacations, Zilia's endless shopping sprees, it all depended on me. To cut them off would mean a drastic upheaval. It would mean confronting them, facing their anger, their manipulation, their inevitable accusations of cruelty. Could I do it? Could I really bring myself to cause them such hardship, even if it was hardship of their own making? The thought twisted in my stomach, a knot of fear and apprehension. The conflict raged within me, a tempest in my soul. On one hand, my maternal instinct screamed, tearing at my resolve. Asterisk, they are your family. Your only son. Your grandchildren. You can't just abandon them. You are a mother, Asteria, and mothers protect their children, asterisk. But another voice, a quieter, stronger voice that had been silenced for too long, a voice that sounded remarkably like Arthur's quiet wisdom, finally rose to the surface, clear and unwavering. Asterisk, abandon them? Or set yourself free? They abandoned you years ago, Asteria. They abandoned the mother who loved them, the woman who nurtured them, in favor of the money you provided. Is this truly love, or is it a parasitic relationship, draining you dry, asterisk? The image of that cruise, that luxurious ship sailing away without me, while I was left to pay the bill, flashed in my mind. The sheer audacity. The absolute entitlement. That was it. That was the tipping point. The scales tipped irrevocably towards self-preservation, towards the desperate need to reclaim my own life, my own dignity. I took a deep, shaky breath, and then another, pulling the cool night air into my lungs. I got up, my legs feeling a little wobbly, but my purpose firm, and walked to my desk. I pulled out my old leather-bound address book, the one Arthur had given me years ago, its pages worn and familiar. My fingers traced the familiar name, Mr. Henderson. My financial advisor. He had been Arthur's advisor too, a man of quiet integrity and immense discretion, a man who had seen my accounts dwindle over the years with a subtle, unspoken concern in his eyes. I called his office the next morning, my voice steady, betraying none of the turmoil within me, as if I were simply discussing the weather. Mr. Henderson, I said, I need to schedule an urgent meeting. As soon as possible. And please, I need to discuss a complete restructuring of my assets. Everything. He sounded surprised, a slight pause on the line, but his professionalism quickly held. Of course, Mrs. Thorne. I can fit you in this afternoon, if that works for you. Is everything all right? You sound unusually determined. Everything, I said, a faint, almost triumphant smile playing on my lips, a smile that felt foreign yet exhilarating, is about to be very, very different. The meeting with Mr. Henderson was a blur of legal terms and financial jargon, but my resolve never wavered. I explained my decision, calmly, logically, without a hint of emotion, as if I were discussing a business transaction, not the severing of family ties. I want to establish an irrevocable charitable trust, I told him, my voice clear and firm. All of my remaining assets, every single penny, will be transferred into it. I want it structured so that the funds will go towards supporting local arts programs for underprivileged children, providing them with the creative outlets they deserve. And perhaps a foundation for medical research, as Arthur would have wanted. He always believed in the power of science to heal. Mr. Henderson listened, his expression unreadable, his eyes shrewd but kind. He had seen many things in his long career, but I could tell this was unusual, perhaps even unprecedented. Mrs. Thorne, he said gently, his voice soft but serious, are you absolutely certain about this? Irrevocable means precisely that. Once the funds are in the trust, they cannot be withdrawn, reallocated, or accessed by anyone, including yourself, for personal use. And it would mean all financial support to your son and his family would cease immediately. Their mortgage, their allowances, the children's school fees, everything. There will be no going back, Mrs. Thorne. I looked him straight in the eye, my gaze unwavering. Mr. Henderson, I said, my voice firm, I have never been more certain about anything in my life. I want to do this. And I want it done as quickly and quietly as possible, with no room for reversal or negotiation. He nodded slowly, a flicker of understanding, perhaps even admiration, in his eyes. Very well, Mrs. Thorne. It will take a few days to process everything, to ensure all the legalities are perfectly in place, to dot every I and cross every T, but by the end of the week, your instructions will be carried out. Your son will no longer receive any funds from your accounts, nor will his wife or your grandchildren. This will be an irreversible change. Walking out of his office that day, stepping back into the bustling city street, I felt lighter than I had in years. A burden, a heavy, invisible weight I hadn't realized I was carrying, had been lifted from my shoulders. It wasn't just the financial burden, it was the emotional one. The burden of expectation, of disappointment, of clinging to a phantom hope for love that was never truly there. I had made a decision. A painful, terrifying, but ultimately liberating decision. And there was no turning back. The die was cast. Of course, my decision was going to have consequences, wasn't it? I knew that, deep in my bones. I steeled myself for the inevitable storm, preparing for the fallout with a quiet resolve. The calm before it was almost eerie, a deceptive peace that felt both fragile and profound. For a few days, nothing. I pruned my roses, reread old books, and simply savored the silence, the absence of demands. Then, the first ripple. A call from Luna's private school, their tone politely inquiring about an overdue tuition payment. I politely informed them, my voice calm and clear, that I was no longer responsible for her fees and advised them to contact her parents. The next day, a frantic call from Zelia, her voice a shrill register I knew too well, asking if there was a glitch with the household allowance. She spoke of bounced checks, frozen accounts, a sudden inability to pay for her weekly Pilates class. I simply stated, no, Zelia. There's no glitch. I've made some changes to my financial arrangements. I offered no explanation, no apology. Just the cold, hard truth. Then came the crescendo. It was a Saturday morning, bright and clear. I was in my garden, pruning my beloved hybrid tea roses, their crimson petals unfolding in the morning sun, finding a strange, meditative peace in the simple rhythm of nature, the scent of earth and blooms. Suddenly, a car screeched to a halt in my driveway, scattering the gravel. It was Caius's expensive SUV, the one I had essentially paid for, its gleaming black paint an ironic testament to my generosity. The doors flew open, and out spilled Caius, Zelia, and even Luna and Finn, their faces a mixture of confusion, distress, and outright panic. Caius stormed towards me, his face red, contorted with a mixture of anger and raw panic. His usually carefully styled hair was disheveled. "Mom! What in God's name is going on?" he bellowed, his voice echoing through the quiet garden, startling a robin from its perch. My mortgage payment bounced. The school called, saying Luna's tuition is overdue. My investors are pulling out of the new venture because the initial capital transfer didn't go through. What have you done? He gestured wildly, his hands shaking. Zelia, ever the dramatics, burst into theatrical tears, her perfectly made-up face crumpling, though I saw no genuine sorrow in her eyes, only fury. Asteria. How could you? Do you know what this means? Our credit is ruined. Our reputation will be ruined. She dabbed at her eyes with a silk scarf, her perfectly manicured nails trembling, but no tears actually fell. Our life is over. I straightened up slowly, deliberately, pruning shears still in hand, the sharp metal glinting in the sun. I looked at them, truly looked at them, for the first time in years. They were no longer the formidable, manipulative figures I was desperate to please. They were simply people. Entitled, manipulative people, facing the consequences of their choices, stripped of the financial armor I had provided. Caius, I said, my voice calm, almost unnervingly so, Zelia. Please, let's go inside. We need to talk. My composure seemed to bewilder them, momentarily disarming their rage. They followed me, bewildered and wary, like two children being led to the principal's office. We sat in the living room, the very same room where I had received Zilia's cruise message, where I had sat silently agonizing. Luna and Finn hovered nervously in the doorway, their young faces mirroring the tension in the room, their eyes wide with confusion. "What I have done," I began, looking directly at Caius, my gaze steady and unwavering, "is reallocate my assets. Every single penny of my inheritance, every bit of Arthur's hard-earned legacy, has been placed into an irrevocable charitable trust. It is now dedicated to supporting arts programs for underprivileged children, and medical research. It is no longer accessible for my personal use, nor for yours. It is beyond my reach, and therefore, beyond yours." Caius's jaw dropped, a look of pure shock replacing his anger. Zilia gasped, her fake tears momentarily forgotten, her mouth open in a perfect O of disbelief. An irrevocable charitable trust?" Caius spluttered, his voice rising, a pathetic whine creeping into it. "What are you talking about? You can't do that. That's our money. That's for us. For your grandchildren." He pointed a trembling finger at Luna and Finn, trying to use them as shields. "It was never your money, Caius," I said, my voice steady, cutting through his hysteria. "It was Arthur's. And then it was mine. I chose to share it with you, out of love, out of a misguided hope that it would buy me a place in your lives. But it only bought you an endless supply of luxury, and me, endless heartache, endless disrespect, and a profound sense of isolation." Zilia, recovering her composure with remarkable speed, launched into a fresh torrent of pleas, her voice rising to a shriek. "But Asteria. Think of the children. Luna and Finn. They'll have to leave their school. Their friends. They'll be humiliated. How can you be so cruel? To your own flesh and blood." She gestured dramatically towards the children again, trying to weaponize their vulnerability against me, to twist the knife of guilt. I turned my gaze to Zilia, my voice hardening slightly, losing its earlier calm. "Zilia," I said, "their school fees have been paid by me for years. Their lavish lifestyle, the luxury cars, the extravagant holidays, this very house you sit in, all funded by me. You both have never lifted a finger to earn a substantial income. You have lived off my generosity, and you have taken it for granted. Worse, you have treated me as nothing more than a bank. A silent, invisible ATM, dispensing cash on demand." Caius, enraged, stood up, looming over me. "That's not fair. We invited you to things. We talked to you," he sputtered, his face a mask of indignation. "Did you, Caius?" I countered, my eyes burning into his, unwilling to back down. "Did you truly? Or did you call only when you needed money? Did you invite me to your parties only to seat me in a corner, barely acknowledging my presence, while you flaunted your friends? Did you ever once, in all these years, truly ask me how I was, without a financial request lurking underneath? Did you ever, even once, suggest that I join you on a vacation, instead of simply expecting me to pay for yours and then being too busy to include me?" I paused, letting my words sink in, watching the realization dawn, however faintly, on their faces. Luna and Finn, wide-eyed, were now watching their parents, sensing the depth of the accusation, the shattering of their comfortable world. "And that cruise, Caius," I continued, my voice unwavering, "the couple's only cruise that I was expected to pay for, while you conveniently forgot to invite me? That was the final insult. It showed me, beyond any doubt, that I am not your mother. I am not family. I am just a source of funds. And I am done being that source. My heart is closed to your demands, just as your doors have been closed to me." Caius tried to interrupt, to launch into another tirade, but I held up a hand, silencing him. "No. You will listen. I have listened to your excuses, your pleas, your fabrications for far too long. I've funded your failed businesses, your extravagant whims, your social climbing, hoping, foolishly, that if I gave enough, you would eventually love me, accept me. But you never did. You just took. And you took. And you took. And in return, you offered me nothing but disdain and exploitation. Zilia was now genuinely crying, but it felt less like sorrow and more like frustrated fury, a tantrum of a spoiled child. "You're ruining us. You're ruining your own grandchildren's lives," she shrieked, clutching Caius's arm. "No, Zilia," I said calmly, looking at her directly, "you are ruining your own lives. Your choices, your inability to live within your means, your dependence on me, that is what has led you here. Luna and Finn are bright, capable children. They will adapt. They will learn the value of hard work, something you have never taught them. They will learn that money doesn't grow on trees, and that true family connections are built on love and respect, not on financial dependency or the illusion of wealth." Caius lunged forward, his face contorted, but then stopped, his energy draining out of him. "You selfish old woman. You'll regret this. You'll be alone. No one will want you when you have nothing." His words were filled with venom, but they had lost their sting. I met his gaze, my heart aching with a profound, quiet sadness for the son I had lost, but my resolve unshaken. "I have never felt more free, Caius. And as for being alone? I was alone for years, right here, in this very house, while I was funding your lavish life. Now, at least, I am alone by choice. And I am at peace with that choice. I have my dignity, and I have my freedom." He stood there, panting, utterly defeated. There was nothing more to say. They had no leverage. The money was gone, beyond their reach, beyond even mine. Zilia continued to sob, burying her face in Caius's shoulder, her carefully applied makeup streaking. He stared at me, a mixture of hatred and desperate disbelief in his eyes, but I knew he understood. Finally, he turned to the children, pulling Luna and Finn, who looked utterly bewildered and frightened, out of the room. The door slammed shut with a resounding thud, echoing in the sudden silence. The roar of their expensive SUV faded down the driveway, leaving only the sound of my own breathing. I was alone again, but this time it felt different. It felt like silence. A profound, liberating silence, a space for my own life to finally begin. So, what happened next? For them, life changed, dramatically and immediately. The illusion of their immense wealth crumbled. Caius's latest business venture, which had been limping along on my funds, collapsed entirely, as did his credit. The mortgage payments ceased, and within months, they were forced to sell their opulent house, moving into a much smaller, more modest home in a less prestigious neighborhood. Luna and Finn, as I had predicted, had to leave their private school. I heard, through the grapevine of casual acquaintances, that they were enrolled in a local public school. I imagined it was a shock for them, a jarring transition, but also, perhaps, an opportunity to learn humility and resilience, to experience life beyond the gilded cage. Zilia's social circle evaporated almost overnight. Without the lavish parties, the designer clothes, the constant flow of money to maintain the facade of effortless luxury, her friends found new, wealthier patrons. Her carefully curated social media posts ceased, replaced by a telling silence. I imagine it was a bitter pill for her, losing the very thing she valued above all else, appearances and status. Caius, without my constant bailouts, finally had to find a steady job, something he had avoided his entire adult life. I heard he was working in sales, a far cry from his aspiring entrepreneur dreams, a humble beginning for a man who had always lived large. I often wonder if he ever thinks about the choices he made, the opportunities he squandered. And for me? My life blossomed in ways I hadn't dared to imagine. It was strange, the first few weeks, not having their demands, not feeling that gnawing anxiety in my stomach every time the phone rang. The silence was deafening at first, a void where their chaos used to be, but then, slowly, it became a soothing balm, a peaceful embrace. I realized how much emotional energy I had been expending on them, how much of my life had been consumed by their insatiable needs and my desperate, futile longing for their affection. With that weight lifted, I started to live for myself again, truly and authentically. Remember how I told you I loved to bake? I started taking advanced pastry classes at the local community college, something I'd always wanted to do but never had the time or energy for, always putting their needs first. I discovered a profound joy in creating beautiful, delicious things, not for others' approval, not to earn affection, but for my own satisfaction, for the sheer pleasure of the craft. I even started volunteering at a local senior center, sharing my baking skills with others, and finding genuine connection and camaraderie there, a warmth I hadn't felt in years. I also picked up my old paintbrushes. Arthur had bought me a beautiful easel and a set of oil paints years ago, a hopeful gift that had gathered dust in my studio. Now, I spend hours in my sunroom, painting landscapes and portraits, losing myself in the vibrant colors and rich textures. It was therapeutic, a way to express emotions I had suppressed for so long, a silent language of healing. I still live in the same house, of course, the one Arthur and I built together, filled with his memory. It's a comfortable home, not ostentatious, but filled with warmth and memories. And now, it feels truly like my home, a sanctuary of peace, not a waiting room for financial demands. I travel now, too. Not on luxury cruises funded by guilt, but on small, intimate tours to places I've always dreamed of seeing. I've explored charming villages in Tuscany, hiked through the rugged beauty of the Scottish Highlands, and next year, I plan to visit the ancient temples and serene gardens of Japan. I travel light, I stay in quaint inns, and I meet wonderful, interesting people who appreciate me for who I am, not what I possess or what I can give them. I have found genuine connections, unexpected friendships. I found a deep sense of peace, a quiet joy I hadn't realized was missing for so long. The charitable trust is thriving, and knowing that Arthur's legacy is truly making a difference, helping children find their artistic voice and advancing medical science, fills me with immense pride. It feels right. It feels meaningful. It feels like the true purpose of the wealth Arthur left behind. The biggest lesson I learned from all of this, you see, is that true love isn't transactional. You can't buy it, no matter how much wealth you have. And sometimes, the greatest act of love you can give, both to yourself and to others, isn't endless giving, but rather, the courage to stop. To draw a line. To force those who depend on you to finally stand on their own 2 feet, to confront their own capabilities and responsibilities. It's a painful lesson, one that ripped my heart open and left deep scars, but it was also the most liberating one. I realized the greatest gift you can give someone isn't money, but the opportunity to stand on their own 2 feet and discover their own strength. And the greatest gift you can give yourself is the freedom to live your own life, authentically and without apology. That was my story. Our channel is full of life lessons like this one, stories of ordinary people facing extraordinary challenges and finding their own strength. If you found my story relatable, or if it resonated with you in any way, please consider subscribing to our channel and turning on notifications so you don't miss our next story. And tell me, what do you think? Did I do the right thing? Share your thoughts with me in the comments below. I'll be reading all of them.